Just jumping in to remind you that my webcomic Cryptid Lake is going to be released on Tapas and Webtoon on a Halloween this year. Links in the description, and now onto the video. Hello everyone! I've done quite a few Pokemon videos by now, and every time I do one, I get so many comments with suggestions of new Pokemons to add to my Gijinka collection. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to be taking some Pokemon that you suggested to me and turning them into humans. If I haven't made a Gijinka of your favorite Pokemon yet, feel free to comment down below so that I can hopefully add them in the next video. Also, feel free to name these characters in the comments. I'm trying to go back to the habit of letting you guys name my designs and announcing them in the next character design video alongside the original comment. And now, with that out of the way, let's get to it. Let's begin the video with the Pokemon Hatterene. Hatterene is a dual-type Pokemon, both Fairy-type and Psychic-type, and they are known to be particularly silent and quiet. Bulbapedia even calls them the silent Pokemon. Hatterene first appeared in Gen 8, aka Pokemon Sword and Shield. This Pokemon has a gender ratio of 100% female. Hatterene is described as being a bit of a lone wolf, often preferring to be alone in quiet places. In fact, they don't seem to like humans very much, often making up illusions to trick humans as entertainment for themselves. The most outstanding thing about Hatterene's design is her clear inspiration in classic witch designs. The fact that she has a 100% female ratio as well as a classic witch design doesn't come as a coincidence, as Hatterene serves as a counterpart to Grimmsnarl, who is a male-only Pokemon inspired by ogres and trolls. I imagine that the human version of this reclusive Pokemon would be a burned-out teacher in training. I really wanted her to be a mentor-type figure, and maybe that way I can start to connect a few dots when it comes to this Pokemon Gijinka universe. So, in my mind, she is a young woman that is doing her first internship as an English teacher in the same school that my Leafeon, as well as Mimikyu, Tinkaton, and Alcremie go to. The students have really mixed feelings about her. On the one hand, she's gorgeous and graceful, but on the other hand, she's pretty weird. She always wears a witch hat, she lives in the town's creepy house. Her house looks like a library, she has so many books that she's starting to have to be creative when placing new books. I imagine rooms with walls lined up with books and bookcases, staircases with stacks of books neatly placed on each step. Most books are romances, but she also has books on history and the occult. She's not a witch, at least she doesn't consider herself to be one, but the occult was always rather interesting to her, especially the origins of different rituals, deities, symbolisms, etc. etc. She's a bit eccentric to be sure, and I feel like most people would find that endearing if only she was nicer. You see, she gives off a very "don't you dare talk to me" aura. Yeah, she is a bit reclusive, she loves being by herself, reading her life away, but you really can't sustain yourself like that, so she decided to choose a career that would let her immerse herself in all the literary classics that she loves so much. At first, being a teacher sounded like a good idea. It wasn't. She really doesn't have the profile to be one. Teachers definitely don't get enough credit for what they do, and Hatterene quickly realized that her job was going to be much more demanding, especially considering that she's teaching high school students and most of them aren't very mature, often causing trouble in and outside of class. Her pay isn't great either. What I'm trying to get at is that she's burned out, she's tired. If she didn't like socializing before, she hates it now, and people can feel it from a mile away. Add to that the fact that her sister asked her to take care of her 2 children while she's away on business, and you get a very drained person. She can see it now, but having her nephew and niece living with her is going to be really good for her. Maybe she'll be able to regain some of the happiness she had before. Next up we have Zorua. So Zorua has two forms, the normal form introduced in Gen 5, aka Pokemon Black and White, and the Hisui version introduced in Gen 8 in Pokemon Legend of Arceus. The one I'm doing right now is the first version. I might do the other version some other time. Zorua is a dark-type Pokemon, mostly male, and it's known as the Tricky Fox Pokemon. It's clearly inspired by the yokai kitsune, a creature of Japanese folklore. Like the kitsune, this Pokemon is known for its illusions. In the case of Zorua, it's not uncommon for them to disguise themselves as other Pokemons in order to frighten off enemies. This Pokemon is particularly mischievous, and it's said to also have the ability of disguising themselves as children and trying to replace the real children. This aspect seems to be inspired by the original fairy folklore. Interestingly enough, when the Zorua transforms, the tail remains visible. If you were to touch the tail, the spell would break. This aspect seems to be another callback to the kitsune. So, my Gijinka of the Zorua is actually Hatterene's nephew. Like I mentioned before, his parents are on business in another country, and because it's a temporary change in their lives, they decided to leave him and his younger sister with their weird aunt that lives in a town nearby. He's 14 years old, and I think it would be fun if he didn't like the idea of moving in with his aunt. I feel like he'd be pretty angsty about it, but then with time he'd realize that his aunt is actually kinda cool and they would end up getting along. Before then, I feel like Zorua would be a pain in the butt to deal with. He's new in town, but he's quickly making a name for himself, and not a particularly good one. Like the Pokemon, Zorua is a trickster at heart. He loves to play pranks on others, especially bullies. You see, I think Zorua has seen his fair share of injustices, and as such, he developed a really strong sense of justice. Because of that, he can't help himself but try and help others that can't help themselves, including pranking unkind people. He loves illusions and disguises, so I feel like he'd get along pretty well with my Mimikyu and her friend group. I also love to imagine that he has a crush on my Leafeon as well. I also think it would be pretty funny if one of his hobbies was coming up with hoaxes. He'd Photoshop blurry pictures and then show them to Mimikyu and Alcremie. At first he would do it as a prank, but he felt bad after a while and would stop lying about the pictures being real. I also love to think of him as a theater kid at heart. Unfortunately, he's a bit too self-conscious about it, and so that part of himself must remain a mystery. He really wants to look tough and super goth and emo, and I'll give him that, he tries really hard, but I mean, his most played playlist is full of musicals, so really, how emo can you be? His relationship with his sister is your typical annoying baby sister and annoyed older brother. Zorua does play small pranks on his sister and she does get upset sometimes, but even then his sister is always following him around, and that's because she knows that he loves her and that if it came to it, he would do anything to keep her safe and happy. And she's right, he would, but you'd never hear him say that. And finally, Espurr. Espurr was introduced in Gen 6, aka Pokémon X and Y, and it is a psychic-type Pokémon. Their main inspiration seems to be cats, specifically the Scottish Fold. He's known and beloved for his 1,000-yard stare, and can we talk about that? I love how silly this guy is. He has no expression for the most part, and canonically that's because it has so much psychic power that it's always trying his hardest to contain it, and I love that. I love his silly face. When designing my Espurr, I designed her after this image of an Espurr holding on to a ball of yarn. It was such a cute image, I had to do it. Espurr is the first one in the evolution line and it looks like a baby, so I really wanted my Espurr to be a little girl. She's about 3-4 years old and she's Zorua's little sister. Since Espurr has so much psychic power, I really wanted this little girl to be sorta psychic as well. She's quiet and always in her own little world, always distracted and always sleepy. She's actually kind of creepy because she seemingly speaks to the air and she seems to see things that are not there. Since she's so young, most people think she's either just playing pretend or maybe she just has imaginary friends. But then again, they do say children are the most vulnerable to the supernatural. Her white eyes also don't seem to help her case, as some say that whenever she looks at them, it looks like she's able to read them like a book. This becomes even more alarming when she ends up rambling about things no one ever told her about. And surprisingly, the other kids in the playground stay clear from her. They think she's weird and scary, she doesn't have many friends as you can imagine. And that actually explains why she's so close with her family. At the end of the day, they are her only friends. Surprisingly, Espurr is actually Hatterene's favorite. Like I mentioned before, Hatterene was a bit against having the kids live with her, but she quickly warmed up to Espurr because she saw a lot of herself in her. She also finds Espurr's behavior very interesting, and she tends to spend a lot of time supervising her, watching what she does. She's overall very curious about her niece. Espurr loves her aunt, and she loves to spend time with her. She especially loves when her aunt reads her bedtime stories and checks the closet and under the bed for monsters before she tucks her in. She loves her brother, she thinks he's really cool, and she wants to be like him. That's why she tries to style her bangs up just like him. She tries her best to tag along with him whenever he leaves the house. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you liked the video. If you wanna see more stuff from me, I'm also on Instagram and Twitter at momopurin_chan and on Kara at momopurin. Thank you so much, and until next time,